You know what? I think I enjoyed John Travolta as a villain. Broken Arrow, directed by John Woo, released in 1996 with a runtime of 1 hour and 48 minutes. Starring John Travolta, Christian Slater, and Samantha Mathis. Also starring Delroy Lindo, Frank Whaley, and Howie Long. Production budget of $55 million, domestic take of $70 million, a foreign take of $79 million, giving a worldwide total of $150 million. Which means it turned a profit to the tune of $95 million. Fairly standard for a mid-90s action flick. I suppose the only real surprise is they didn't try and go for a sequel. So let's have a look at the characters. We'll start with Deakins. Deakins is your cool, tough guy. He's in control, he's in command, he's also out of his mind. Real alpha control mentality. Must be in charge, has all the power, doesn't want to share, and doesn't even like the idea of sharing. Quite a lot of fun watching Travolta deliver this understated menace about Deakins. A good quality character. Next up is Hale, the co-pilot, our hero. Just a good guy. For a highly skilled elite pilot, they really don't show that much in him. They really just lean into his good nature more than anything else. He plays, or he's portrayed as the everyman hero. Pretty much turns into mean guy versus nice guy. Works well. No complaints really. Then you have Ranger Girl, whose name I have completely blanked on. Tough, resilient, resourceful, really quite brave. Really out of her depth. This is so far past her pay grade, this problem. She's a park ranger, not a specialist commando. With some of the stuff she pulls in this movie, you can only assume she's had a very eventful childhood or a diversified training background. She's kind of the pseudo love interest for Hale, but thankfully they're more focused on her being the action female lead, or more support than direct action, I suppose, but still in there all the time and off doing her own heroics every now and then too. Good character, never felt annoying, which is important. You know what I mean, right? Every now and then they'll have a support character who's more irritating than endearing, and it just drags the whole movie down. This, however, this wasn't her. Speaking of annoying, you've got this guy. He's the backer. He's the finance man for Deakins' plan. And he's quite irritating. And he's meant to be. He's just a whiner. And thankfully, he's also dead fairly soon. So you only got to put up with him for about, what, a third of the movie. They have Giles, the guy who is here for reasons I don't really understand. He's got a lot of lines, got a lot to do, but ultimately adds nothing to the movie. I mean, he's not annoying. You don't mind him being there. But when you think about it, he does nothing. He's just there and says things and does a couple of things that contribute zero. Unlike the Colonel, who has less lines, less screen time, but gets in on the action. Gets in there, does some support, fire support, helicopter support, and then gets very dead. Even for an action movie, this one chews through quite a few support characters. Like, more than necessary, to be honest. They give you a little bit of detail on these characters, enough to actually start to enjoy them on the screen, then they're gone. It happens in all these sorts of movies. I don't know why it stands out so much in this one, but it just does. It's weird. Apart from the main henchman, he manages to stick around right to the very last couple of scenes, which is kind of cool because he is very good at what he does as a henchman. He henches well. He well henched. So overall, characters get a 3. They're good characters. They fill all the gaps, tick all the boxes, and do everything they should in an action movie like this. It's about all you can ask, and there's nothing really that you can be unhappy with. Story. Not too bad for a 90s action flick. Bad guy fighter pilot decides he wants out of the Air Force. He decides he wants to retire with lots and lots of money. Comes up with a plan to ditch a pair of nukes and sell them to the highest bidder. His co-pilot objects to being murdered. They both punch out of the plane. Now you've got a little MacGuffin hunt. 2 live nukes, 1 pilot on the run, 1 pilot chasing him. The rest of the movie is these nukes being maneuvered through the desert and around different places, different scenarios, switching hands between the good guys and the bad guys, the government freaking out, trying to contain the situation and responding, the bad guy's plans designed to counter all the government reactions, the good guy getting there and spiking the wheel and slowly whittling down the bad guy's troops. Chase, finally figuring out the end game plan of the bad guy. Good guy catches up, kills everyone off, confronts the bad guy, punch, train crash, victory. Oh, and then finally gets to formally introduce himself to the girl who's been running along helping him out the whole time. That was kind of nice at the end, to be honest. Mind you, one of my favourite parts is the fact that this story opens very strongly. You learn everything you need to know about the two main characters within the first 5 minutes. Personalities, motives, attitudes, outlook on life, the way they interact with other people and each other. All covered very nicely, minimum fuss. They also took their time with the build-up. Bad guys doing bad guy stuff, you knew something was up, something was off about some of the characters. You figured that out, but they didn't rush it, which was nice. They let you think about it, let you feel the rising tension until the action sequence where it's all revealed. In any of these sorts of movies, though, watching the main villain's carefully laid plan unravel because of heroic actions is always the best part, and watching this one is no different. They did a few unexpected things, taking the bombs to a mine to try and defuse them and or set them off or destroy them underground. That was kind of cool. I didn't actually expect them to set a nuke off when I saw this movie the first time. That surprised me. At first they had it look like that Hale was the bad guy. So I'm expecting the rest of the movie to be this big misdirection and them trying to hunt down and chase Hale and arrest him or shoot him or whatever it is. And him trying to convince him, no, I'm the good guy. But no, they have the NSA come in right in the middle go, no, we've made an intercept. Turns out the Deacon's the bad guy, Hale's innocent. And I was quite surprised with that. I thought, so we're going to skip all that stuff in the middle. All right, that's not bad. I mean, we have seen it like 1,000 times before and it is a little old now, so that's good. And Ranger Red's little side quest, her little adventure on her own, you don't see a lot of it, but it is quite cool. The fact that they take her off without Hale and she follows along and does all her sabotage and gets in the way and is generally a pain in the neck. Very nice. The finale on the train, that was well done, that was entertaining, quite exciting. They kept stepping it up, as only John Woo does. And at the very end, where everything's blowing up, I mean, we just think explosion. I'd say half the budget of many other movies was spent on the pyrotechnics to light that train up at the end, and the helicopter, and the other helicopter, and grenades, and everything else going on. At the end of it all, the story was much like the characters. It did everything it needed to do. It presented everything it needed to present. It told the story. It told it quite well. And weren't really any major surprises, but there were no major disasters in it either. While there were a couple of plot holes admittedly, they weren't anything that big. You didn't really think about them too much, and if you did, it was after the movie anyway, and it didn't really matter. Simple enough action story that kept your interest. It's full of actiony action and things explode. Woohoo! A stock standard 3. A good time, good story. What more do you want? Look and feel. We'll start with all the stuff that worked really well. To begin with, the scenery. Hey, it's a desert. Can't go wrong with a desert. Very nice looking desert, I suppose. Kept waiting for a bunch of Jawas to turn up and salvage the wreckage, though. The bomber looked cool. The bomber looked really cool. I'm not sure if the inside of a cockpit would be that spacious. You could have a bunk and a coffee machine in there. But it doesn't matter. It was fun. You bought into what you were seeing. All the air traffic control and military chatter sounded very real, sounded very authentic, sounded like it was meant to be there for a reason. How good it is, how accurate it is, I couldn't tell you. But, it sounded real enough that you didn't think about it, which is all you really need. Actually, I never want to know what that's meant to sound like, because if I really knew what all that air traffic stuff was actually supposed to be, I'd be so distracted in most of these movies. I'd probably wreck them all. The music is excessively 1990s, but, okay 1990s, the most tolerable edge of that era, especially Deacon's music. Every time you see Deacon and the bass guitar kicks in, it sounds a little westerny, sounds a little extra tough guy. Yeah, that was cheesy, but gee, it was fun. The shot where he's walking out of the heat haze in the desert and the music's playing, he's smoking his cigarette with his sunnies on. It's like, oh wow. Hello, evil Top Gun. Also got to say that the slow-mo plane crash was very, very John Woo. It's the most woo John Woo gets. It was extra woo. Woo! And of course, we get all the 90s tech. And that's just on the edge of being extra techie, but not techie enough. The computer screen looks good, but the graphics are terrible. Mind you, why does 90s high-tech look more high-tech quite often than current modern-day high-tech? I don't know why. It's got a different aesthetic. It really does. A couple of silly things that stood out to me is that everyone who had a shotgun had this urge to cock it repeatedly without firing. Just, there's the enemy, chunk chunk. Prepare to fire, chunk chunk. There's another thing, chunk chunk, chunk chunk. Like, how many rounds you got in that thing, man? It's when action stars use cocking the shotgun like a punctuation mark in a sentence. It's like, if it's a long enough sentence, they'll be out of ammo. Now you can just shoot them. And the one that really stood out to me was the dramatic turnaround and talking to someone with your back to them, staring into the sunset, saying dialogue while the person stands behind you paying close attention. It's very soap opera every now and then. There's one whole sequence where he turns around and says something, then turns back and she turns around and says something. And they have this whole conversation when nobody's looking at each other. It's very silly. As I said before though, the final sequence on the train, that was the most action movie-ish this movie gets. And it's quite aggressive at some stages. It's like really steps up the aggression and the adrenaline and really just gets nasty. And it's good fun. It's a really cool sequence on there. So much destruction. Kind of started to feel like Under Siege 2 at this point. It just got so intense. Overall, look and feel, it's fairly polished. It's a pretty good presentation. Props are good, sound effects are good, music's good, vehicles are good, locations are good. You buy into everything. No real dramas across the board. Another 3. Script and dialogue. Well, to begin with, this was very 90s action movie. And it really sounded like it. To be honest, some of the dialogue's kind of cringy, but it's also action movie cringy, so it's not really that bad. I mean, it's not fantastic, but it's not that terrible. Some fairly decent back and forth and banter between different sets of characters. You got Deakins and Hale. At the opening of the movie, you get their camaraderie. Despite their personality differences, they really do get along quite well. And then when they're enemies in the field, they can bite at each other and take shots, and it sounds actually quite personal, because these two know exactly what to say to upset each other. Hale and Ranger Red, bit of fun. You know, nothing too deep, nothing too intense, but at the same time, they're kind of fairly easygoing dialogue between the two. Overshadowed, however, by Deakins and his chief henchman, Kelly. Those two didn't get to say a lot. They didn't have much to say, but when they did, it was either very entertaining or just... No, actually, it was just very entertaining. It was just fun. Those two going on, good value. The recurring "please don't shoot" at the thermonuclear warheads was very nice. Now, as for the science of the movie, I have no idea about nuclear terminology, nuclear science, nuclear blah 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 blah. It sounded real. It sounded Hollywood real. You bought into the fact that this is a bad thing. People are reacting like it's a bad thing. And you believe that in this world of this movie, this is true. And that's really all a script has to do. The script has to drag you into it well enough that you don't question the movie during the movie. There are so many movies like that you'll finish watching and then go, hang on, that's rubbish. What? But that's okay, because as long as it doesn't pull you out during the movie, you're fine. There's one particular scene in a valley getting chased by a helicopter, and they highlighted Hale's sense or situational awareness as a pilot, where he's just standing there and he can just hear something. He seemed thinking about it and then just goes, trying to run away. As a result, they avoid getting shot up by a helicopter by like seconds. And I thought that was quite clever. The rest of the sequence was a bit of rubbish, to be honest. It was action movie fun. At the same time, you know, 2 people, one of them with a 6-shooter versus a helicopter with a machine gun. There really shouldn't be a fight there. But hey, action movie, let's go. John McClane in the Die Hard movies doesn't count. He is the weapon. No, that's a totally different thing. I also thought that the reaction to the nukes going missing was actually quite believable. It felt realistic. It was this controlled sense of panic. No one was happy. Everyone's kind of freaking out, but they're keeping it together. They're freaking out with a purpose and a direction. Aside from this guy, I still don't know why he was in this movie. As I've mentioned once before, I'm not a big fan of the F-bomb in my movies. I see them as lazy writing, to be honest. They scatter them through here, mainly from Deakins. Some are situationally appropriate. Some are just because he's in a bad mood. Yeah, you know. I suppose the last thing I'll mention is there are many 90s action movie henchman deaths in this one. They chew through a lot of people. At one stage, they chew through a whole bunch, and then they go to a new scene, and all these new henchmen turn up, and it's like almost like they're refilling the roster because the good guy's coming, and you know you're running out of ablative armor, you're running out of henchmen to get in the way of the bullets, so we better get some more of those, pack them in here. So on the whole, script and dialogue, you know what? It was almost a 2.75. Because some of it is truly cringy stuff. But then you've got the banter between the characters, and quite a bit of it is very, very nice. So that pushes it up to a 3. Script and dialogue squeaks in at a 3 through strength of personality of your primary characters. Fun factor. So, did I have fun? I think so. I think I did. I mean, it's not like I didn't enjoy myself. I don't regret the time I spent watching the movie. But it's weird because now that I stop and think about it and look back on the movie, I just feel underwhelmed. Or maybe just whelmed. I'm merely whelmed. I'm neither underwhelmed nor overwhelmed. I just am. It's very odd. It technically didn't really do anything wrong for a 90s action flick, or even a modern day action flick. It didn't really do anything wrong. It just didn't really do anything. It's a very strange assessment to make, because as I mentioned throughout the rest of this review, everything gets a 3. Everything so far has been good. So why wouldn't Fun Factor be good? Because it isn't. Or at least it wasn't as good as it could have been. But then I don't know what I'd put in to fix it, or what I'd take out to improve it. This is why the Fun Factor category is such a wild card. You can have terrible movies that are actually a fair bit of fun, and then movies that don't really do anything wrong but just aren't much. Bland. Somehow this movie ended up just being bland. 2.75 is pretty much a bland score. It's not bad, it's just porridge. It's just the porridge of movies. It just is. There you go. Fun Factor, 2.75. So, final score. We add all this up, we get a 14.75. I think I have discovered my bland setting. 14.5 or 14.75 are probably what you consider movies. Didn't upset you, didn't excite you. It just was a movie. Anyway, there we go. That's my review for Broken Arrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'd love to hear what you think about this movie. Did this actually tick all the boxes? Did you really enjoy this one? If so, that's awesome. Please tell me why. And has anyone else noticed that Christian Slater just dropped off the planet? Haven't seen him in anything for ages. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, share my review around, have an excellent week, and as usual, please go and find some time to watch a movie.